everyone, and welcome back. Ready for another deep dive? Today, we're stepping into the world of Shakespeare.
Well, more like diving headfirst.
Yeah, you got that right. But don't worry, this isn't your high school English class. We're going way beyond the surface level of Romeo and Juliet today.
Definitely. Like,
Ooh.
everyone knows the story, right? But we're going deeper, asking the whys and hows. This academic assessment you shared, it gives us a new lens to view this iconic play.
Totally. So think about this. It's Shakespeare's England, right? The Elizabethan era. Buzzing with energy. They were kind of obsessed with love, drama, a little scandal.
Oh yeah, they ate that up.
Yeah.
And Shakespeare, he knew exactly how to play to that. But here's the thing. He didn't just invent these stories from thin air. He got his inspiration from some pretty interesting places.
Oh, tell me more.
We'll take Italy, for example. Back then, Italy was like the Hollywood for passionate love stories and crazy family feuds.
Ah, so that's where he got the drama. Makes you wonder if Shakespeare had a secret collection of Italian love letters stashed somewhere.
Right. And imagine those scandalous Italian stories. They weren't just read in private. They were being acted out live on the English stage.
Ooh. So audiences were seeing these familiar stories, but with a Shakespearean twist.
Exactly. And think about the audience back then. A mix of everyday people and the wealthy elite, all crammed into the Globe Theater. Can you imagine the energy? They'd have known these Italian tales, so when Romeo and Juliet hit the stage.
It would have been like, oh, we know this, but W.A.
Precisely. Familiar, yet completely new. Shakespeare knew how to work a crowd.
For sure. But Romeo and Juliet, it's more than just a trendy Italian import, right? It's deeper than that.
Way deeper. And that's what we're diving into today.
Love it. So let's get to it. This assessment really digs into what makes this play more than just a typical love story.
Yeah, totally. It's like Shakespeare threw in everything but the kitchen sink.
Right. You've got love, fate, family drama, societal pressure, all crammed into this pressure cooker of a story.
Exactly. And one of the things that hits you is how Shakespeare shows us love. It's not all hearts and flowers.
Yeah, there's a darkness to it.
Right. He shows us that feeling of falling head over heels, but then, well, we see how love can make people do crazy things.
Like, love can make you do things you'd never normally do.
Sure. And that can be dangerous, even destructive.
It's like he's warning us a little. Love isn't always pretty.
Exactly. Think about Romeo and Juliet when they first meet. I mean, it's love at first sight, sure, but...
At a masked ball, that turns into a huge fight.
Exactly. Their love story starts with passion, but it's fueled by chaos from the beginning.
It's like they were doomed from the start, star-crossed lovers and all that.
And that phrase, star-crossed lovers, it's important.
Yeah.
You see, back then, Elizabethans were really into astrology. They believed your fate was written in the stars.
So it wasn't just a cute saying, it meant something bigger.
Exactly. When Romeo and Juliet are called star-crossed, it's not just romantic, it means tragedy is probably coming.
Like fate had it out for them from the start. It makes you think how much free will they actually had in all this.
Right. Like, they're always pushing against something they can't control.
Yeah.
And then you've got the families, the Montagues and the Capulets. Why all the hate? It's never really explained, is it?
No. And that bugs me every time. Like, what started all this?
That's what's so interesting. It's like Shakespeare took out the reason on purpose. That makes it even more powerful.
It becomes this force of nature.
Yes. This independent force that just is. Like, hatred itself is another character in the play.
And that just adds to the feeling of doom hanging over everything. It's like you know something bad is going to happen.
Yeah, you just don't know how it's going to blow up.
Okay, but enough about all that heavy stuff. What about the characters themselves? I mean, Romeo and Juliet is so captivating because even after all these years, the characters still feel so real. I mean, who hasn't been a Romeo at some point, right? Head over heels, writing bad poetry.
Oh, tell me about it. Though, let's be real. Romeo kind of gets a bad rap for how quickly he jumps from one girl to the next.
Oh yeah, what was up with Rosaline? He's all hung up on her and then boom, Juliet walks in.
Right, you're like, Romeo, dude, you don't even know her.
Ah.
But this assessment, it actually points out that this intensity, that's just Romeo.
It's part of what makes him Romeo.
Totally. He feels everything so strongly and just dives in head first.
Which, you know, doesn't always lead to the best decisions.
You can say that again. But then there's Juliet. Everyone thinks she's just this innocent girl swept off her feet.
Right, but this assessment says that's not really giving her enough credit.
No way. We forget she's only 13 in this play, and she's making huge decisions. Especially for that time period.
She was challenging the rules.
Totally. Juliet's smart, she knows what she wants, and she goes for it.
She's like the original rebel. Which actually makes me think about the nurse. She starts out Team Romeo and Juliet, but then, well,
Yeah, she kind of throws Juliet under the bus.
totally. What do you make of that? Was she trying to help or just save herself?
The nurse is so interesting. Honestly, scholars are still debating her motives. But this assessment argues that she represents a more realistic way of thinking.
Like in contrast to all the crazy love stuff.
Yeah, it's like she's saying, hey, love is great and all, but it doesn't always win, especially when you're dealing with family and society and all that.
She brings us back down to earth a little.
For sure. And speaking of bringing things down, we got to talk about how Shakespeare uses language. His imagery, it's not just there to sound pretty.
It's like a tool.
Exactly. It adds to the emotion and the drama. This assessment, it pointed out the light and dark imagery. What'd you think about that?
Oh, it's everywhere in Romeo and Juliet, like Romeo saying Juliet is the sun.
Yes. It shows how beautiful and bright she is, but it also hints that their love is this powerful, dangerous thing, like fire.
It's both beautiful and dangerous.
Exactly. And then you've got the poison imagery.
Oh, right. And it's not just the poison Romeo drinks at the end.
No, it's like the whole play is poisoned by this hatred between the families.
It gets into everything. Shakespeare was good at that, using these little details to build the story. Which, speaking of, we should talk about the structure. 5 acts. That wasn't just a random choice, was it?
Not at all. Think of the 5 acts like a recipe, but for a tragedy. Each act has a purpose, like steps that pull the audience deeper into the story.
So, you've got the introduction, the family's feuding, Romeo and Juliet meet.
Act 2, they fall in love, but things get complicated. And then Act 3, it all blows up.
Mercutio dies, Romeo gets banished. Talk about a turning point.
Big time. That's when you realize it's not going to end well for these two.
It's like Shakespeare cranks up the tension with each act until, bam, tragedy. And the thing is, even though we know it's coming, it's still so captivating.
Totally. Shakespeare's a genius at that, taking this classic story, giving us these characters and themes that still resonate today.
And even after hundreds of years, we're still talking about it.
Right. And this assessment made a cool point. It says that Romeo and Juliet, it's unique. It's the only one of Shakespeare's tragedies where romantic love is the driving force.
Interesting. It makes you wonder, though, what if Romeo and Juliet were around today?
Oh, with cell phones and social media.
Yeah. Would their story have been different? Would a text message have saved the day?
Now, that's a question for the ages.
Right. It really makes you think. Well, that's our deep dive on Romeo and Juliet. Thanks for joining me today and for all the insights.
Anytime. Always a pleasure to dissect Shakespeare.